Hey everyone, and welcome to the Mad Science Lab. I'm Aaron St. Dennis, the FF Mad Scientist. You can catch me on Twitter at FF Mad Scientist. You can also find my work at the FF League Winners, DLF, Player Profiler, and King Fantasy Sports. Today with me for the second part of the Rookie My Guys series is Brandon Haye. Brandon, thank you for joining me.
Yes, thanks for having me on. And you can find me on Twitter at HeyB3, tweeting about all football stuff, college and pro. A little bit of tweeting about my two dogs, and also you can find me now on DLF, formerly with the IDP guys and Dynasty Nerds, but I'm just focusing on DLF now. Recently, I did an article on the Patriots and their fantasy values moving forward. That was before the kind of rumors about Matt Jones possibly being traded, but there hasn't been anything else on that. So I think it is still
Excellent.
good information.
Excellent. Happy to have you. Of course, we're silent for 5 minutes, no disruptions. And the second you start talking, my kid opens the damn door. So bear with me. That happens. He's 8 and doesn't listen. So we'll see how this goes. All right. We are going to kick off your My Guys. If I can get the screen going here. Where are we? With Boston College wide receiver Zay Flowers, checking in at 5'9", 182 pounds with a 4.42 40 time. That was the most impressive of the measurements that I found. He is going on DLF as he's been moving up. I know that he has crept into the end of the first round, now going at 110, just behind Quentin Johnston and in front of Zach Charbonnet. So that's an interesting one. I think I have him as my wide receiver 3 or 4, depending. I flip-flop him back and forth between him and Addison. Where do you have him?
Yeah, right around there. Wide receiver 3 and 4.
Depending on
I think you brought up Quentin Johnson, and he's such a hard one for me. So it kind of like all of those kind of flop, but JSN is my number 1, and then the next 3 kind of a little bit interchangeable on the day or what news I hear from what teams are looking at them.
The only reason I have Johnston as my set 2, I like the prototypical alpha size. I get it. He has a huge range of outcomes. He could be an alpha 1 receiver for years. He could be N'Keal Harry. I know. But so then it leaves me with Zay Flowers and Addison. I kind of see both of them as big slot receivers. That's why they're my 3-4. But Zay is a guy where I think when I first started, I had him at 12, like wide receiver 12. I've moved him up now. He's 3, 4, 5, depending on the day. What do you like about him?
So I've liked Zay Flowers for a couple of years. Going into the 2021 year, he had just had a big sophomore year, and then his starting quarterback got hurt, and his numbers were kind of down. So then he came back his senior year, and his quarterback came back at Boston College, Jerkovic, but he was not great. But still, he had his best year, over 1,000 yards, 12 touchdowns. I love him just because the versatility, even though he is not a big alpha receiver. He can be physical. He can go up and get the ball. You can throw it out for screens. He can go deep down the sidelines, and also he's just great after the catch. And with the NFL kind of moving towards using the slot more, I kind of love Zay Flowers similarly to how I loved Jahan Dotson last year. And a lot of people didn't think Dotson would go in the first round, and he ended up going. And I think they could be similar players in that they could have an impact their rookie years if Zay Flowers goes to the right spot.
That's a solid comparison. He's a tough one for me. I don't see him as your X alpha receiver, but I see him as more than a slot. So he's pretty big and physical. Well, not big. I guess that's not the right word, but he's stocky and he's fast and just strong. So he's definitely someone I could see moving up draft boards. Where do you think he goes in the NFL draft? See him getting day 2 capital?
Yeah, I could see day 2 capital, probably early day 2.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I could see a scenario where he, someone just falls in love with him, him going late first. I don't think he creeps up where Dotson was last year, because I think Dotson had was on the better team at Penn State and had the more impressive tape. Flowers does some. I know on Twitter there's been some clips coming out where he doesn't even get the ball, but they just show his route running, turning the defender all the way around and everything.
Yeah,
I think that part he's already there. He can run some good routes. He's not just a guy you have to create catches for. He can run a lot of routes on the route tree. But definitely for me, late first, mid to early second is
I
where I
could
think
see
he'll
him
go.
going, and I'm trying to think off the top of my head who from 20 to the end of round 1. Can you think of any teams in there? Is Minnesota before that? I see him in that range, 20 to 31. I just can't. I feel like Minnesota's before that. 18, maybe.
It'd be interesting with Minnesota, but I feel like they're going to focus on defense because that's what killed them. I'm trying to think who else playoff
That's what I'm trying
wise.
to think. Philly. It seems like a lot of teams are leaning more running back, but Dallas, what, 25? That's a good landing spot, Dallas.
Yes, that is a good
Dallas
landing
is 24
spot.
25.
If the Chiefs hadn't gotten Kadarius Toney, I think that would have been a possibility. But now that they got Toney, I don't think that will necessarily. I don't think the Eagles are necessarily going to go that route. They're probably going to maybe lean defense since they've lost a couple of defensive starters.
As I said, his DLF Superflex ADP is 110. Do you see in your own Superflex rookie drafts, do you see yourself drafting him earlier than that, later than that, just right? What do you think of 110? Too rich for your blood or right, just about right?
I think that's about right. And, I said this comparison before, but that was right around, 110 to like 2-1 or 2-2 is last year where I got Dotson an awful lot. Like if he was on the board, I would pick up Dotson over, reaching for one of those running backs. And it's funny you said with the DLF, ADP, him going right above Charbonnet. I would take Zay Flowers over Charbonnet any day. I am not a big Charbonnet fan.
Me too.
Charbonnet
was my cliff. He was at 110 seemed to be where the cliff ended or started.
Right.
And after that, it was Hyatt Downs, blah, blah, blah. I think Zay Flowers for me, I like him more at 111. I think he's now the bridge between the 110 cliff where it starts and ends. He's that bridge player there. I'd have rather him over the Charbonnets, Hyatts, Downs, Mims, who else is going here? Downs, Hooker, A-Chain. I'd have him over all of those considerably.
Downs would be close for me because I think he's going to be pretty good. But yeah, all those other players are iffy for me. I will say though, even though I wrote that piece on the Patriots, I might not take him that at 110 if he ended up going to the Patriots, just because I don't know what that offense is necessarily going to look like. And if Downs went to a better situation, I think I might lean that way.
All right, dealer's choice. Who do you want next? Brown or Palmer?
Let's go Chase Brown.
Chase Brown. All right. 1 second. It'll take me a second to pull it up here. Present. All right, his second my guy is Illinois running back Chase Brown, checking in at 5'9.5", 209 pounds with a 4.4 340 time. Again, most of those are from the combine. They're all subject to interpretation. Those 40 times, hand times. Every site seems to have him differently, and I'm not sure if he ran again at his pro day. Typically, if they run at one, they don't run at the other. So I feel like he's probably a 4.43 range, but that's what we got on Chase Brown. My biggest question is he was someone I was on early. I wrote one of the rookie profiles for him for King Fantasy Sports. I was off him completely after the Senior Bowl. He fumbled and dropped everything. What gets you past that?
So that's concerning. And I actually watched some more film of him earlier today. I don't think he's a bad receiver, but I definitely don't think he's a good one. So he's a guy that sometimes body catches the ball. He's not going to make nice catches. He can run some. They ran some wheel routes for him at Illinois, but he's not one of those that's going to make great catches. So that's something he would have to get better at. He's going to be the guy that you run between the tackles. I really like him in that Illinois' offense was totally one-dimensional. They couldn't pass the ball very well. They would have 10 people in the box, and he'd still be able to break off runs. I will say that I like his vision and his patience, and I like when he sits his foot in the ground and has that burst. I don't think he has elite speed, but I think he has enough speed. He's not the most elusive player, but he can break through tackles.
See, I thought when I first started looking at him, I liked him because I thought he worked well on the perimeter as a rusher and a passer. And then I seen the Senior Bowl and he couldn't catch passes. So that's why I was out on him. And then I still think you're right. He could run between the tackles. I like him on the outside of the line rushing. The problem is I don't see him as a 3-down back. I don't see him as a pass catching back. At 5'9", 209, he's got some meat to him. But 5'9", you think that's big enough that he would be an early down back for a team? I'm not sure what role he has.
Yeah, it would be interesting. He's kind of a player that I think could go day 3 and kind of have an impact like Dameon Pierce had last year. But one of those players, if he's on a team that's not very good, that he gets a lot of work, try to sell him once he gets that work. Because I don't think he's going to have a lengthy career as a fantasy starter necessarily. Yeah. I think he's going to be a better football player on a team than fantasy wise. But if you can capitalize on like maybe some camp buzz, if he gets drafted or goes to a good spot, then that's something. But I do like his skill set. I think in spot places, he definitely could have flex value, in his career.
I definitely agree. I think he's a day 3 pick, probably later day 3 for me. He's one where it's another one that's going to be really dependent. If he doesn't get drafted, if he doesn't manage to get day 3 capital, he's going to be right off the board for me. But it's also going to be depending on what system he goes to. If he goes to a good landing spot where he can make the team out of camp and get an opportunity, he has some value. You have any idea what his for a player like this? It's always helpful for special teams. Does he do anything on special teams that you know of?
I don't remember him doing much on special teams. And I'm not gonna lie, I was a little disappointed on his pass protection watching some of the film. This is what I like to say. Some players don't want to block at all. He's a willing blocker.
He's not always.
He's always not always great. He'll get in the way, but he's not great at that. So that's another knock on him. So someone's going to have to fall in love with his ability just running the ball, probably on first and second down, maybe being some somewhat short yardage because he's a bigger guy. It all depends. But I think this year is the year that we might see the most day 3 players actually have an impact because I think this class is so deep and loaded that some of those players wouldn't drop down necessarily to that day 3 capital in other years.
I had him, like you said, not a great technique blocker. He was willing, but a lot of times resorted to just a cut block and throwing himself. And I don't know. He's like I said, I'm going to let the NFL tell me at the draft how they feel about him. If he goes undrafted, that tells me they don't think he's a thing. And he's going to be largely off my board. If he manages to sneak his way into the early day 3 or pretty much anywhere in day 3, I think he would still have some taxi squad appeal. But like you said, I don't think he has any long-term appeal, really. So do you have a team you think he would fit best in?
Oh, I'm trying to think. I would say I actually would have liked if the Jags didn't just sign D'Ernest Johnson, having like a backup to Etienne, day 3, but something like that where they have a running back, but they need a second back to kind of just spell the first back, and in that instance, you're just one injury away from him being a starter.
Right now on DLF's ADP Superflex, he is going 29. I think that's a safe range for him. Towards the end of the 3rd, into the 4th, you're in dart throwing territory, so he's a low risk, low reward. I find him. I'm trying to think of who to compare him to. I want to say like a Samaje Perine, but he's not a pass catcher. I'm trying to think of someone who just they have that maybe a Madison where if he, the starter goes down in front of him, he could give you a week here and there, but I don't think he's ever going to take the job away from anyone. I don't even think Madison's a great comparison, but off the top of my head, that was the first one that come to me. So
Yeah, I agree. That kind of scenario I agree with, but I think Madison is more dynamic and a better pass catcher. Yeah, because Chase Brown actually, let me see, he had how many catches did he have? He had 27 catches last year. So like not watching like the film, I was like, all right, maybe he could do that. But then watching, he did struggle to catch the ball. He double clutched a lot of catches and a lot of body catches. So that
QB was terrible though, wasn't he?
What?
I can't remember off the top of my head who the quarterback was, but I remember him being
terrible. He wasn't good. He was.
Okay, that's what I thought.
He wasn't good, but still, most of the backs in this class have good, are pretty good receivers. So, compared to them, he's probably mid to the bottom in that aspect.
Fair enough. All right, let's move on to Brandon's last my guy of the group. We have Nebraska wide receiver Trey Palmer checking in at 6 feet on the dot, 192 pounds, and a 4.33. This is another guy who's lower in the rankings, and I haven't gone all that deep into, but the 4.33 really stands out. He is checking in on DLF Superflex ADP at 52. 52. So in that range, what's that? Beginning of the fifth?
Yeah. And a lot of leagues don't even have a Trey Palmer. So, yeah.
I may have a lot of Trey Palmer when this is all said and done, just based on he's got half decent size, great speed. Just based on that alone, I might have a lot of them. What do you like about him?
Yeah, so he transferred, he was at LSU. Out of my three guys, he was the best coming out of high school. He was a 4-star. The other two were low 3 stars. So, he had some accolades coming out of high school. Didn't do much at LSU. I watched Nebraska's spring game last year. And I kind of saw him, was kind of excited about him. And he had a good year, over 1,000 yards, 9 touchdowns. I liked how they used him. They did a lot of short screen type things, get him out in space, but then he could take the top off the defense too. He got some good separation. He's not great against press coverage, but I don't think he's horrible. I think that's something that could be coached better, and he could do that. But in the NFL now, you can move your wide receivers around and kind of alleviate some of that. So I think he could be a really good third wide receiver on a team. And we've seen with the more pass-heavy offenses now, the slot or third receiver can have great fantasy value.
I think he probably goes early day 3. I would have said somewhere on day 3, but early is how I feel. I just think a lot of these guys with some size and speed are going to go earlier in the draft than we think, just because there's so many of the slot receivers. And I think he profiles as bigger and faster than just a slot threat. So I think he might creep into early round 4. And he's another one, depending on the landing spot, the role, if he makes the team out of camp, I think he could have more value than most people think. Where do you see him going in the draft?
Yeah, I think depending on the thing is there hasn't been much buzz about him, pre-draft. So I don't know if he could sneak into round 3, but I wouldn't be surprised because, Tyquan Thornton, went way higher than we thought last year. So you never know if a team falls in love with someone. But I would say early day 3, like you said. And yeah, he has some versatility with his size. You can kind of put him outside, put him in motion like a lot of teams are doing. So I think he's someone in fantasy drafts that is going to creep up in that ADP once the draft happens and everything, especially if he gets, close to, late 3rd, early 4th draft capital.
I'd love to see him go to a team like the Giants, a team that's really desperate for receivers. I think he could provide some decent value there.
Definitely. And I like what they're doing. And, Dable is very good at using players to their best strengths. So I think that would definitely, and even, because the Eagles kind of need that third wide receiver also. And because they've kind of gone back and forth on some players. So, I could see him being, a good spot there. Or, we talked about it earlier, the Cowboys, if they decide to wait a little later into the 4th round for a wide receiver.
That's a good one. The Cowboys, I like that one too. I think he could be a number 2 in Dallas. They didn't end up signing anyone, right? They just Gallup. I'm trying to think.
They got Cooks.
Oh, they did. Okay, so he'd be the 3. I felt like there was someone. I kept saying OBJ, but they didn't get OBJ, and then I'm saying I know they got someone. Okay, so Cooks, he'd be the number 3 behind Cooks then.
Or like you talk about OBJ, I wouldn't mind him, with the Ravens because, even though I like Rashad Bateman a lot, we haven't seen much with injuries. And OBJ, you don't know what you're doing. And, well, that's obviously only if Lamar ends up staying with the Ravens.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, that's always something to watch. All right, I guess that takes your my guys. Great. Thanks for joining me. So once again, let's just tell everyone where they can find you.
Yes, so you can find me at DLF. Gonna have a lot of articles coming out with the draft coming up and post-draft, and you can find me on Twitter at HeyB3.
You said you do what was it? You did cornerstone rankings, right, on DLF?
Yes. Yeah. So because I do a lot, I have in the past done a lot of Devi type rankings, and I asked about that, and they said they were filled there, but for Cornerstone, I've actually seen anyone else do this. It's players that were drafted last year that are going to be drafted this year, and that would be in the draft next year. So for a 3-year span, you rank those players. So it kind of gives you like a short term kind of look into some dynasty players.
So it kind of gives you a bridge there between redraft dynasty and Devi, and bridges it all into one 3-year window. I like that. And that's great around this time. I love to see the charts. I'd like to see some of the data too from you at a later date. The ones where they compared, be too late now with the Jeffersons, they're past, but comparing last year's rookie class to this year's class, and and next year's, and see where they all rank, gives you an idea of ones I seen a lot of was where Brees would compare in this class as opposed to Bijan. Would he still be 1? Or if a quarterback had come out of this class last year, where would they have fallen? That's really fascinating to kind of help you value. And, obviously last year's quarterback class sucked, but that's always good. So that's good. I'll have to check out that a lot more. I didn't even know we had that on the site. So, well, thank you for joining me, Brandon. It's been great to have you. You're welcome back anytime.
Yes. Thank you a lot, Aaron, for having me.
It was a pleasure. Thank you, everyone, for checking out the Mad Science Lab. I'll be continuing for the next few weeks with a series of analysts. 1 a day, I think we're doing. They'll each have their 3 my guys. I'm not sure how long that'll go, but I'm hoping to take it into the draft. So this has been the Mad Science Lab. Check us out on youtube.com at Fantasy Football Mad Scientist podcast. Thank you very much. Thanks for watching.